Today I'm talking about why it took me 9 years to finish a 3-minute documentary. Let's go. Hi, this is Alejandro, and this is Documentary in Progress. As this is the first proper video that I make for the channel, I wanted to tell some sort of origin story, if you will. Basically, tell you how it was that I become interested in documentaries and how that interest has developed over the years, what I'm currently doing, what was my first work, and then what I did in the previous year. So the title is a little exaggerated, of course. It didn't take me 9 years to make a documentary, but it took me around 9 years of study before I considered myself ready to make one. And the first one, it actually took me a month of work just for 3 minutes of a documentary, which is very interesting. I'll tell you about that. But let's go back 9 years ago. At the time, I was writing some personal blog or something, and I rescued this from an old backup. Let me read you this quote. I begin to develop a taste for cinema that could turn into a hobby. Although I feel I still have lots to watch before even considering myself a beginner. I often find myself looking for the filmography of some director or writer, and frequently realize I've already watched other films by the same people. After which I brave comparisons under the critical eye of my immature cinephile consciousness. End quote. So pros aside, I think it was around that time that I really became interested in cinema as a hobby. I kind of fell in love with the idea of telling a real life story in an emotional way, in an interesting way, more than narrative work. I wanted to make my own documentary, right? So I said, like, okay, I have some ideas, I want to record this or that, but I had no idea how to start. And a few months after I wrote that, I found myself in Ireland. I was doing an internship for university at the National University of Ireland in Galway. I purchased myself my first camcorder, a really cheap one, basic one, and a book. The book was Making the Documentary by Michael Rabiger. And it was this book that turned out to be a blessing and a curse at the same time. So let's say a blessing because I quickly realized, wow, this is so beautiful. There are so many ways and techniques that I can use to tell a real life story in my own unique way. But at the same time, those techniques, I didn't know any of them, which is why it was sort of a curse as well. I didn't know much about cameras, about photography or composition, about music, about storytelling, about editing. There were so many things that I needed to learn before even attempting to do something. There can be a trade-off. Some people will say you should just start and maybe learn along the way. I was a little more conservative. I started to learn separate things first before I tried to make a documentary. So I made some sort of long-term plan of things that I needed to learn. Here's a list of things that I've done over the years. Number 1, learning to use a camera. Now, I know this may sound a little silly because in principle, you can just grab a camera and press record and you're done. But obviously I wanted to learn the more advanced controls, every button, every function, what they do, what they don't do, what the limitations of the camera are, how it behaves when there's little light, when there's too much light, how is the audio that you record with the camera. I remember with the camcorder, the audio is kind of terrible. It's always windy and noisy. So I needed to improve over that, and I need to learn how to control it. So that was the first challenge for me, the first part of my plan. Number 2, composition. Now, this is a photography term, not the music term. I need to learn about composition. It's just something that I didn't know anything about before. And somebody brought it to my attention, and I realized, wow, this is key, and I have no idea. So I started investigating, reading a little, doing some photography exercises. You know, I went from just doing random snapshots of whatever I was looking at, and they were terrible, to eventually photographing something with a little more interest in the way the framing was done. I had to learn about a little perspective, vanishing points, to make my photographs a little more interesting, and eventually my video as well. Number 3, music scoring. Now, this is a no-brainer for me. I wanted to learn about music. I had some basic knowledge of music already, some understanding of harmony and melody and chords, chord progressions and all that. But I needed to get into how to actually write that music in software with MIDI, with some other technique. Because obviously at the beginning, and maybe later on, I won't ever have the budget to hire an orchestra, for example, to record some classical music that I want for my film. So it's way easier now and cheaper just to have the software and to have the skill or a person who can MIDI program the score into a DAW, music software basically. And that will allow me to have better music at a fraction of the cost that used to be. Obviously, eventually I would like to have an orchestra or hire an orchestra for a film, but for now. Number 4, video editing. Now, another way of looking at this or naming this would be learning to tell stories with video, which is a little more complicated than just dropping a bunch of clips and pictures to iMovie and adding a song and basically having a music video of your trip to the park. Learning to tell a story is more complicated. There's spacing involved, there's transitions that may signify something or not, and a bunch of other details. So I already knew how to use some software like iMovie, but I didn't know the storytelling part of it. So what I did here as an exercise is created a YouTube channel. My wife and I have been recording videos for the last couple of years, and we publish them on a small channel where we tell our family and friends what life is for us here in the US, because we moved from Chile to the US, so we use it as a means of communication, just keeping in touch. It's also a great opportunity for me to practice, the editing part, choosing the music, and telling the story in general. Number 5, interviewing. This may be one of the most important aspects of documentary filmmaking. It's not just having a conversation with somebody in front of a camera, but you do need to learn how to approach that conversation, how to extract information. Maybe that's not the right word, but how to get information out of people, maybe get to the emotional part of it, or of a particular story, how to get to the hard part of it and make them tell you something. There's a lot of practices there to be done. And for me, the practice I did with a small podcast that I started. I recorded something like 6, 7, or maybe 8 episodes with a guest. So it was me interviewing a guest. And I just used it as a learning platform. It was long format, let's say half an hour, 1 hour, or 2 hours, just talking to somebody and trying to get deep into the topics. So that's been great. And now the next part, I think, for me will be doing more interviews with video, because you have to keep your mind on the subject and on the camera, which is a little complicated. You cannot be paying attention to the camera too much, because the subject will think, well, he's not looking at me, he's more interested in the camera. So that's a little complicated, I guess. When you have a camera operator, they can do that for you, and you just focus on the interviewing part. But as I'm not there yet, I have to learn to do it by myself. So there will be a little more practice. I've done a few already with camera, but I hope to do a few more as I learn. Number 6, short narrative films. Now, this deviates a little from the documentary realm, but I've realized that there's a lot of value in working for narrative films. It could be long format, but short is usually more approachable for a beginner, right? So I've been doing a couple of shorts of my own, and I also participated in one with a screenwriter. He wrote a short and I recorded, and it's just such a great exercise. You have to do the camera part and the lighting part and the editor, the sound designer, sound mixer, and all that. So there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to practice, and those skills overlap with the skills necessary in the documentary world. So I've been doing that too, and I hope to continue to do more short films in the near future. Now, apart from the things that I mentioned already, there's a few others that I know, I am aware of them, that I should be practicing or should practice eventually, but I haven't done it yet. And here are some of them. Let's say our honorary mentions: lighting, color grading, sound mixing, sound design, audio recording, screenwriting, storyboarding. Anyway, after all of this rambling, I still haven't told you how it was that I made my first short documentary. So that's the next part. At the beginning of 2019, I joined a small community called Content Creator Collective. It was started by Felix Schlater, the guy behind Roscoe, who is also the social media manager for one Mr. Beast. The community gathers in a Discord server where we talk about different topics, from videography and business strategy to food and other mundane stuff that brings us closer together. One day, somebody shared a link to a film festival organized by Moment, a brand that makes lenses for cell phones. The core idea of the festival is that the short videos have to be recorded with a phone. It also had a hard time limit of 3 minutes, which for me meant that I wouldn't get carried away recording hours of footage, which was possible. I decided this would be a perfect way to finally put in practice many of my learnings of the last few years. I settled on a topic that had intrigued me for a while: violin making. I had met a young luthier when I took my own violin to a shop for repairs, and that gave me the idea of interviewing him to ask, how is it that a young person chooses such an unlikely career path? I went to the shop, asked permission for it, and agreed on a date for the shoot. That day, I took my gear, drove there, and collected around 40 minutes of footage, including 30 minutes of interview. The trickiest part was reviewing the interview footage to extract only a couple of minutes that would tell a compelling story, or at least a coherent one. As soon as I had a rough cut that lasted 3 minutes, I sent it to the guy who composed the music. We did a couple of live sessions going over the footage, and eventually he sent me the finished score. Yes, only the score. So I still had to find musicians to record it or do it on my computer with MIDI. I chose to do it with musicians because it would be more interesting. The piano was recorded in Chile, and I recorded the violin and cello here near Seattle. I mixed the parts as a standalone piece and added it to the timeline to be the background music. You can listen to the music on SoundCloud, by the way. Overall, it was a beautiful experience. On average, I would say I spent 4 hours every day working on the documentary after my day job, and around 10 to 14 hours on weekends. I was tired, but satisfied with the result. I hope you can watch it if you haven't seen it yet, and I'll tell you about going to my first festival with the short in a future video. That's it for today. See you all in the comments, and keep documenting.
I like being in a shop. I've always loved being in a shop. If I could somehow, find a better balance and make more,